So good evening, guys. My name is Maurya Hanspal, and in this session, we're going to continue our previous session on reading and understanding the annual report of the company. So in this session, we're going to begin with the other operating revenues. In the previous session, we had finished till the other current liabilities, right? Yeah. So in this session, we'll talk about the other operating revenues. So basically, this section has arrived from the column of revenues in the profit and loss statement or the income statement. So here you have the other operating revenues. So in other operating revenues, like if you want to know that apart from the main revenues of sales or sale of scraps and all that, what had been the other operating revenues? So here the company had got some export incentives, scrap sales. So sales is basically there might be something within the company or a product within the company which might not be working good. So the company has like sold that product and got the money. The other scenario can be what? The other scenario can be in making a product. Like for example, if you are making a product, there might be some wastage in that product as well, or some useless material which cannot be used particularly by that company or particularly for the manufacturing of that product. Okay. So selling all this extra part in the market for someone who can just use it. So that is your scrap sales. Then you have the other income. So the other income the company can earn from the interest on bank deposits, investments, employee loans, interest on tax-free long-term bonds, or dividend on mutual funds. All these things sources the company had earned the money from. Okay, and this is as per the effective interest rate and not as per the marginal interest rate. Because when you are charging the interest rate, we have like two types of taxations and interest rate. One is the effective interest rate and one is the marginal interest rate. See, since we are talking about the interest rate, it won't be like marginal. The other one would be the nominal one. Okay. But when we talk about the purpose of taxation, जब हम tax की बात करते हैं, so then one you have as the effective rate and the other you have as the marginal rate. Okay. So let's first understand the difference between the effective rate of interest and the nominal interest rate. So what is basically the nominal interest rate? The nominal interest rate does not include the effect of compounding, whereas the effective interest rate, it includes the effect of compounding. And why is compounding here? Because it is ultimately the interest on bank deposits, investments, bonds, and mutual funds. And the stock market works on the principle of compounding. So वहाँ पे like you're gonna get an effective tax, effective interest rate. But like what happens in case of loans, like when you have taken loan to someone or given loan to someone, at that point you cannot charge it at an effective rate, because otherwise the interest rate would be too high and millions crores में पहुंच जाएगा. ठीक है? In that case, banks also give you a nominal rate of interest. Because loan के cases में you cannot charge a compound interest. Okay. And see, and make note of one thing, in case of interest rate, we have the nominal interest rate and effective interest rate. Okay. आगे, like when we take it in terms of economy and combine finance with economies, we have the real interest rate. So what happens in the real interest rate? Your nominal interest rate is making some adjustments taking into consideration your inflation or महंगाई. Okay. And your real rate of interest is nothing but the nominal rate of interest minus inflation. Okay. So that was for the purpose of interest rate. And now for the purpose of tax, you have two kinds of taxes. One is the effective tax and one is the marginal tax. Okay. So what happens in case of marginal tax? The marginal tax is something which like we follow in the income tax. मान लो कि अगर इनकम लाइक 0 से 2 लाख है तो कोई टैक्स नहीं है, 2 से 10 पर आ गई तो 5% है, अगर 10 से 15 पे आ गई तो लाइक 7.5% है. सो दैट्स अ मार्जिनल टैक्स की एक हर एक स्लैब पे तुम्हें एक इनकम टैक्स लग रहा है कि अगर इतनी इतनी इनकम है तो उतना उतना टैक्स लगता जा रहा है. बट लाइक व्हाट बेसिकली हैपेंस इन केस ऑफ द इफेक्टिव टैक्स रेट, इट इज बेसिकली द टैक्स चार्ज्ड बाय योर टोटल इनकम. ओवरऑल तुम्हें जो हुई है इनकम उस पर एक फ्लैट रेट ऑफ टैक्स रेट होगा, एंड वही मतलब कि सारे इनकम पे एक वही टैक्स चार्ज हो जाएगा. दैट इज योर इफेक्टिव rate of taxation, and here you do not have any tax slabs. Whereas in the Indian system, like when we talk about the Income Tax 1961, and when we combine it with the Act of Finance Act of 2019 and so on, like you have been given slab, so that is a marginal tax. Okay, when you are getting into like so many brackets, like you will be paying an additional marginal tax. Okay. Second, going with the cost of materials consumed. Here you have the raw materials and the packing materials. See, there is like when I particularly talk about the cost of materials consumed, there is a lot of confusion among the people between the COGS. COGS is the cost of goods sold, and COMC is the cost of materials consumed. And a large number of students have a query between the two, that what exactly is the difference between the two, the cost of goods sold and the cost of materials consumed. It is same. Both of them are same. Okay. And the formula basically for them is your opening stock plus your purchases minus your closing stock. Isn't it? No. Plus your direct expenses also. And direct expenses in terms of all the expenses which have been directly attributed towards the manufacturing of the product. Be it your cost of raw material, packaging of raw materials, your labor. मतलब फैक्ट्री तक पहुंचाने के जो भी खर्चे हैं, बट फैक्ट्री के जो खर्चे हैं और जो उसके आगे के खर्चे हैं, दैट आर इनडायरेक्ट एक्सपेंसेस. ओके, मतलब कि फैक्ट्री के बाहर के खर्चे मान के चलो, दैट आर बेसिकली और इनडायरेक्ट एक्सपेंसेस. मान लो like if in the question they have given you the electricity charges of factory, so the electricity charges of factory would be your direct expense and not indirect expense. Whereas if they say you the charges of electricity for the purposes of office, that would be a direct expense. So all those things, starting from the procurement of the raw material to like manufacturing it and making it available for the final consumption and storing it in the factory or warehouse, वहां तक you have the direct expenses. And जैसे ही factory या warehouse के बाहर निकल गया, your indirect expenses started to come. Maybe like it can be some traveling expenses. It can be the petrol of the van or the truck with which the products are going to the shops or the markets. Driver ka kharcha. Okay, it can be your sales commission. So all these are indirect expenses. But in case of cost of materials consumed, which is also called the cost of goods sold, the formula is your opening stock plus purchases minus your closing stock plus direct expenses. And how like you're gonna get the opening stock? Opening stock is nothing but जो previous साल का जो closing stock है. And what is the closing stock? जो इस साल का final amount है. जैसे ही देखो, ओपनिंग स्टॉक इसमें क्या होगा? यू हैव द ओपनिंग स्टॉक जो पिछले साल का फाइनल अमाउंट है, दिस वन. एंड लाइक व्हाट वुड बी द क्लोजिंग स्टॉक जो इस साल का फाइनल अमाउंट है, राइट? यहाँ पे तुम देख सकते हो, अगर हम ये भी देखें, अगर हम ये वाला सिनेरियो भी देखें, दिस इज 19, दिस इज 20, राइट? जो 19 का क्लोजिंग था वो 20 का बन गया ओपनिंग. जो 19 का क्लोजिंग था वो 20 का बन गया ओपनिंग. फिर इस साल कुछ खरीदा, कुछ बेचा, फाइनल क्लोजिंग ये हो गया. सो इफ यू आर टेकिंग इनटू कंसिडरेशन 2020, this would be your opening stock and this would be your closing stock, right? For 2019, this would be the opening stock and this would be the closing stock. And how to get the purchases? The purchases are the purchase of raw materials. And this is your purchases, your raw materials and packaging materials. So when you add your raw materials and packaging materials, which are your purchases, plus your opening stock minus closing stock, now where are the direct expenses? Those we have to find out in case of the other expenses. And in other expenses, they would give you a combination of both, your direct and indirect. इसकी हम अभी बात करते हैं. So going down, employee benefit expenses, salary वैलरी हैं, so these are not indirect expenses, okay? But your wages are indirect. Wages are direct, sorry. Your wages are direct. But here they have given an accumulated amount. Accumulated, but we need just wages because wages are for the purpose of laborers. एंड सैलरीज आर फॉर द पर्सन हु आर लाइक प्रोफेशनल। तो उन्होंने नोट नंबर 36 में जाने को बोला है। अब नोट नंबर 36 में लाइक दे हैव गिवन लाइक फर्दर प्लान्स, एम्प्लॉय प्रोविडेंट फंड में कितना पैसा लग रहा है, कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन टुवर्ड्स पीपीएफ एंड ऑल दोज थिंग्स दे हैव मेंशन्ड क्लियरली, योर पेंशन एंड ग्रेचुइटी प्लान। ओके, ये हम इसकी बात करेंगे। पहले हम अदर एक्सपेंसेस पे आ जाते हैं। उससे पहले लाइक लेट्स टॉक अबाउट द फाइनेंस एक्सपेंसेस। Interest cost on employee benefit, overdraft, interest on like finance lease and all these things have been mentioned here. ठीक है। अब other expenses में से we have to see which are the direct one, and the direct expenses would be included in the formula for the cost of goods sold. अब finished goods handling, transportation ये नहीं आएगा, because तुम्हारा like finished good बन चुका है and वो अब सेल हो रहा है। ठीक है। स्पेसिफिकली इसको बात करने से पहले सी वेजेस का अमाउंट इन्होंने लाइक स्पेसिफिक नहीं दिया, एंड दे हैव लाइक जस्ट गिवन द टोटल। ओके, सो अब ये वेजेस अमाउंट, हाउ अ फाइनेंशियल एनालिस्ट गेट्स अ वेज अमाउंट, बिकॉज वी एज एन इन्वेस्टर और अ पर्सन लाइक हु वांट्स टू इन्वेस्ट इन मार्केट, उसको पता ही नहीं चलेगा, बट अ फाइनेंशियल एनालिस्ट वुड ट्राई हिज बेस्ट एंड वुड गो आउटसाइड द एनुअल रिपोर्ट ऑफ द कंपनी। ठीक है, मतलब कि कंपनी के सोर्सेज से बात करेगा, सप्लायर से बात करेगा, एंड वहां लाइक ही वुड गेट टू नो कि इस टोटल अमाउंट में से वेजेस कितना था। सिमिलरली फिनिश गुड्स हैंडलिंग वी कैन टेक, बट ट्रांसपोर्टेशन एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन वी कैन नॉट टेक, बिकॉज फिनिश गुड्स हैंडलिंग अगर फैक्ट्री में करी गई है, ठीक है, तो विल टेक, अगर नहीं करी गई है तो वी कैन नॉट टेक। अगेन लाइक दिस इज द पर्पस ऑफ अ बिजनेस एनालिस्ट टू फाइंड आउट। ओके, एंड ये सब एनुअल रिपोर्ट में मेंशन नहीं होगा। एडवर्टाइजिंग, सेल्स, प्रमोशन नहीं होगा। पावर एंड फ्यूल हो सकता है, और जनरल लाइसेंस फीस नहीं होगा। इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी एंड मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम्स नहीं होगा। या मेंटेनेंस एंड रिपेयर्स तो बात की बात है। रेट्स एंड टैक्सेस नहीं होगा। ट्रैवलिंग नहीं होगा। कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैन्युफैक्चरिंग चार्जेस हो सकता है। कंजम्पशन ऑफ स्टोर स्पेयर पार्ट्स हो सकता है। ट्रेनिंग नहीं, विद होल्डिंग नहीं। लेबोरेटरी हो सकता है, बिकॉज दैट इज लाइक बिफोर मेकिंग द फाइनल प्रोडक्ट। Your market research can be there, your bill correction, your security charges, like it depends किस पर्पज के लिए। अगर फैक्ट्री के रेंट के लिए तो होगा, अगर ऑफिस के लिए नहीं होगा। इंश्योरेंस, इफ द इंश्योरेंस हैज बीन डन फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ फैक्ट्री एंड सेविंग द गुड्स तो होगा, अगर नहीं है तो नहीं होगा। प्लस सम अदर मिसलेनियस, एंड दैट वी हैव टू सी। प्लस दे हैव गिवन द क्लास वाइज सेल ऑफ प्रोडक्ट्स, तो आप देख के पता चल रहा है कि कौन से प्रोडक्ट की सेल सबसे ज्यादा है। सो 281, 392 ये माना, तो हमारा जो मिल्क एंड न्यूट्रिशन है इसका सबसे ज्यादा सेल है, एंड सबसे कम सेल इज 2772, योर पावर्ड एंड लिक्विड बेवरेजेस। अब एम्प्लॉय बेनिफिट प्लान में क्या आता था, पीएफ, प्रोविडेंट फंड, पेंशन स्कीम। सो दीज आर बेसिकली basically like when a person is young, so he's investing a certain amount into the provident fund. Provident fund में क्या होता है, like 12% is contributed by him and 12% is contributed by his employer, right? And उसमें से around 3.67% goes to PPF and 8.67% goes to the national pension scheme. Whereas the employer, he contributes 1% extra, and that 1% extra is for the administrative charges and for the deposit insurance guarantee, कि जो पैसा वहां डाल रहे हो वो इंश्योर रहे। ठीक है, तो मेक नोट ऑफ वन थिंग, आइडियली मतलब कि 12% लाइक दोनों कंट्रीब्यूट करते हैं, बट एम्प्लॉयर कंट्रीब्यूट्स लाइक 1% एक्स्ट्रा, एंड दैट इज फॉर योर जनरल एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्सपेंसेस एंड योर एम्प्लॉय बेसिकली योर लाइक डिपॉजिट जो भी है फॉर देयर सिक्योरिटी पर्पसेस, दैट इज योर एम्प्लॉय लिंक्ड सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट स्कीम, एम्प्लॉय लिंक्ड गारंटी स्कीम, एम्प्लॉय लिंक्ड गारंटी स्कीम, ELGS. And this amount is divided into your provident fund PPF plus the national pension scheme. National pension scheme में ज्यादा होता है, like around 8.67%, and provident fund में like you get around 3.6 कुछ percent. Okay, and like 1% extra by the person, your employer. Hmm. That's all we'll do in the next session. Yeah, पेंशन ग्रेजुइटी ये सब मेंशन है, प्रोविडेंट फंड्स, नेशनल स्कीम्स कितना अमाउंट डाल रहे हैं, करेक्ट. Then we had something regarding the share based scheme. And share based scheme के लिए हमको बोला गया कि go to note number 37. So what exactly is in note number 37? Let's see it. Yeah. Share based plan are your like restricted stock units or performance share units. Basically your ESOPs. But ESOPs are different from your restricted stock units. ESOPs are granted only in terms of shares, whereas the restricted stock units are granted in terms of both the shares as well as cash. You have an option. ESOP में at the time of exercising the options हो सकता है कि market price कम चल रहा हो and तुमको loss हो जाए, ठीक है. But in RSUs at least some amount is guaranteed by the company and तुमको loss नहीं होगा because they are redeemed at the par value, ठीक है. So we'll be talking about some more topics in the next session. So that